Welcome back to the Budget Archive. My name is Mitch, and before we get into the video, just want to let everyone know that I have gone out and I've bought a pocket camera. This is the DJI Osmos Pocket 4. This is one of the best cameras you can get at the moment in terms of doing some recording at home. 4K camera, good stabilizing. So I'm hopefully going to be using this at coming events, including Nationals in 3 weeks' time, and possibly even this weekend when I go pick up a collection. So I'll test it out, see if I can get it running. I've still got quite a bit to set up. Got the mics to set up, got all the accessories that come with it to make it good to use at a big event. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully you'll see some videos using that soon. Getting into the deck list, I have tried to keep this as short as possible. Anyone who knows me knows I can talk for hours about Luxem. In the past, I have tried to record a video before. It ended up being about 2 hours long, ended up scrapping it. It just wasn't worth uploading with how long and how drawn out it was. If people do want to hear some in-depth description of decks like this that I am actually good at and play a lot, then I can look at possibly doing something like that. But a lot of that ends up being just hours of me just talking about specific cards, specific interactions, and what you want to do. And I often find that it ends up being a real drawn out video, and a lot of people don't really want to sit there listening to me ramble for 2-3 hours. So for the first time ever, Luxem Xander is actually viable in a budget deck. As we'll see at the end, this deck is over the $50 price point. However, if you remove dungeon guides from it, it is immediately like $10 below the budget, which is very insane for a deck that has this much power. In the past, Xander has won events, it's done well at regionals, I won a store champs with it. It is just such a viable deck in terms of consistency and being able to have an answer to most matchups. Now, there are matchups that you're just going to lose against. Aggro decks can often run over it if you don't see your prevention. The control decks can out-control it if you don't see your Luxem. It is very much a high roll deck, but it ultimately has a good spread of matchups where it can be viable in most metas. Starting off with Spirit of Serene Fire. Now this is your main consistency piece in the deck. This used to be like a $30-$40 card, and in fact it's like $4 to $5 now. It's just insane. There's no reason not to run it in these low fire count decks that want the consistency of having an early game without being clogged up with your advanced element cards. So the main thing with this is that you're effectively going to bottom any Luxem cards in that starting 6, except you might keep like a Light Weavers or a Luxem side, or maybe one of each, just depending on the matchup and what you want to go for. This is a bit of a faster version of the deck in terms of it can kill fairly early on if need be. So you aren't always going to be going to that turn 10, 11, 12, trying to get all your Luxem and then double Light Weaver Assault like a lot of Luxem decks. However, you want to just effectively look at the matchup in front of you and then decide from there. This is a little bit of a technique with this deck where you just are going to learn it over time. You aren't always going to know exactly the perfect cards to keep and perfect cards on the bottom, but you'll slowly pick it up as you play this a bit more. Down to level 1, same with this. You're generally going to be glimpsing the Luxem cards or the cards that you don't really want to see right then to the bottom of your deck, and then keeping the pieces that are going to help you be consistent and get to level 3 as fast as possible. Standard Death Executor. This is one of those ones where in the deck we've got a few things like Exploit, Incap, Slice and Dice. Pieces that are pretty good in this type of deck in terms of being able to use them, prevent your opponent from doing something. You could Slice and Dice unprepared, killing a unit on your opponent's field, counter one of their early cards like Creative Shock, which can be a massive momentum swing, and then use Xander to get that card right back so you haven't really lost anything, even though you've put your opponent out by so much. Xander Blind Steel, this is the main powerhouse of this deck. You've got, at the beginning of your recollection phase, you may reveal all cards in your memory. For each Luxem card revealed this way, your opponent puts one card from their hand into their memory. The thing to note with this is that it is a trigger where they have to respond to the trigger before you reveal. As soon as you reveal, the whole effect must resolve at once, so they must then put cards into their memory before they know how many Luxem cards are actually in your memory. So this effectively puts your opponent in a situation where they have to respond to the trigger before they actually know what you've got in order to have the cards in their hand to actually do something. And a lot of the time you can bait your opponent out if you don't have any Luxem cards, or you just don't have enough to force them to put much down. bait them out into thinking that you do have a ton of memory now and they need to respond, and that can put you in a position to actually win the game because they overextended themselves and played cards out when they didn't actually have to. Assassin's Ripper. This is one of the ways you win along with the Slice and Dice combo. If you haven't seen this before, effectively you remove a prep counter by tapping this, gets +2 until end of turn, ends up being a 3 attack, 2 durability weapon. You then activate Slice and Dice prepared, and it comes in for 3 with the Assassin's Ripper, so 6 total damage on the first hit, and then the Slice and Dice will trigger, creating another copy, coming in for 6 along with Assassin's Ripper for 9, so you're doing 15 damage in one attack, which can quite often end a game there and then. Dummy Trainer. Now, this is probably something you'd rather have a backup charger in the position of. However, backup charger is, I think it's getting up to $70 or $80 on TCG Play currently. It's just insane. I don't know why it's still creeping back up when we're getting so many more replacement versions of it, like this one. However, the main thing with it is that you aren't getting the power cell of this. The power cell then can be turbocharged, draw 2 cards, and just ends up being a good consistency builder. Dummy Tray is another good thing you can use though. Play this out. Yes, they get an ally, you don't always want that, but often it's not really going to affect the game too much. There are a few other versions of this, like Tengu or the Merlin Scepter, I can't quite remember what that it's called, that could be played instead if you've bought those recollection decks. This is just effectively here as another way to draw a card in memory, late game to get cards into your memory. Fire Resistance Bubble. As we'll see in the sideboard over here, we've got wind and water as well. Just whatever you prefer, what your meta's playing. Maybe if you're not really running into any ally decks or anything that requires attacking in your meta, you can take Terraforming out of main board and bring one of the bubbles in. However, I'd probably just leave it like it is and switch out depending on what your local players play, bringing the bubble that best represents that meta. The Fairies Timepiece is another good addition to this deck. Not only is it a pay 5 draw card into memory, so an effectively more expensive backup charger, but one that can allow you to get a lot of cards in your memory fast in the late game. But also, it can be brought out earlier in the game in order to tax a regalia that you may not want your opponent to bring out. This could be something like Safeguard Amulet or maybe Terraforming, just anything that you really don't want to see them play. But then it just sits on the field, and once they've paid that tax or just bought the thing out, then you can crack this afterwards, having made them lose a card and then giving you a bonus card as well. Safeguard Amulet, prevention for non-attack damage. Good thing to have in most decks, especially budget decks. Terraforming, another good card to have. Some people are running Ducal Seal at the moment. However, I just find that Terraforming's a little bit better because you're able to bring it out earlier in the game. Yes, going into the late game, Ducal Seal is a better choice. However, it just comes down to if you think you're going to be turbo on level 3 every game, or if you may need to take that turn off, bring this out in order to prevent yourself from dying, and then be able to take a turn where you are able to level up level 2 and then dungeon to guide level 3, setting yourself up to go into the late game. Insignia of the Quahazi. This is probably one of your main consistency pieces in this deck. It is a free card because it's from the Proxy's Vault, so if you don't have one, go print it out, play with it as a proxy, you're allowed to. It's 0-drop Regalia that pay 3, put a preparation counter on your champion, and then has a class bonus effect of whenever you activate a prepared card while your influence is 6 less, draw a card in your memory. So the main reason in this deck we're running Exploit Vulnerability is because of Insignia of the Quasi. Exploit Vulnerability has the prepare 1, and then it has, if it's prepared, choose assassin unit, and that gains on ally hit, destroy that ally. This can come into effect if you're running against the Shinju allies and big blockers that just aren't going to die like Majestic Spirit. However, a lot of the time this is mainly there in order to exploit prep with Insignia of the Quahazi, allowing you to then draw a card to memory and then draw a card off exploit, and then be able to pay the 3 after that to then put a prep counter back on your champion. This is also the main way in this deck that we actually gain prep counters. The only other way in here is actually uncover the plot, which is just put 2 on, as well as there's 2 Xander effects giving you 2. So once you go to level 3, if you're able to then pay 3 for this, put a prep counter on, you've then got that 3 prep counters straight away ready to go for Slice and Dice. However, a lot of the time, Slice and Dice is going to be a late game thing in this deck. There are builds of this deck that use Sadi, and as we'll go into the upgrades later on, Sadi is a card I would put into this deck in order to give you that consistency of gaining prep counters early in the game and being able to go for those turn 2, turn 3 kills rather than having to wait till the late game. However, for this version of the deck, this is probably your most important piece to protect, and I would effectively say if the opponent is going to try remove it, incap the removal. If they're running the horse, I apologize, you're not going to have fun. Then we have Photonic Blade. Photonic Blade is a brand new card out of RDO, and probably one of my most favorite cards out of RDO. I've done some insanely stupid damage with this. The combo I've done that damage with is not in this deck, because I just find it's a little bit clunky. I tried to play it at the regionals, and I never got it off, never got a chance to play it, mainly because I was playing into aggro decks, and then decks with just a ton of taunters in front of me. But this is just a great card, because unlike Assassin's Ripper, where you have to remove a prep counter to give it the +2, it already has the +2, just full stop. And then on top of that, it gets +1 for each refinement counter on it, and then whenever you recover, put a refinement counter on it. So keep in mind, if you need the damage, and I did not figure this out until after I'd finished playing the regionals and gone and done my dealing, that actually you get a counter when you release Spirit of Serene Fire. So if you need that one more damage to kill your opponent, you can just lineage reese the Spirit of Serene Fire to give yourself that +1 damage on here, and then go for the kill. I don't know if that's been something that could have affected my games much up till now, but it's definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on in the future. It's also something that if you have a couple counters on this, it's going to be attacking for 5. Use the slice of dice with it. First one comes in for 8. Second one will then come in for 11. So you're going to be doing 19 damage in one attack. And once you're in the late game where you've got this all set up, that's quite often going to be a kill turn. It's also a good thing to have that I've had quite a bit where my opponents don't see it as a threat. They've got maybe a couple of lustrous slimes out or a couple big blockers out that you're not able to get through. And you can effectively sit there and have this on the field, gaining life over time, ticking up. I've had this on 22 refinement counters before because I had Dustlight on the field. I had Orb of Sealing out against the slime player. They had no banishment. They could not Storm Slime. They had -1 level. They had no way to gain that level. And I effectively caught them in a trap and they couldn't kill me. But I couldn't kill them because I couldn't get an attack through and I wasn't drawing my Lightweavers. So we sat there for probably a good 20 minutes, just going back and forward. I would gain all the life back. They'd chip away with their small allies and get counters on this, and this ended up like 22 counters. Then I was able to draw Lightweavers, and I believe I ended up killing them with a Lightweavers not with an attack. However, it just puts you in a position where if you are able to then straight away remove their blockers, you can just kill this blade a lot of the time. Moving on to main deck, we've got Angel Attendant. This is a 2-cost Advanced Imbue 1. With Advanced Imbue, you must reveal all cards used to pay the cost of this card. As long as one of them is an advanced element, it will become imbued. And then when it is imbued, it has Intercept and also has On Death Draw a card. Now you don't have to imbue this if you're going to cremate it, because you're just going to be cremating it straight away, drawing a card off this, then drawing 2 off the cremation ritual, as we'll see down here. However, it is one of those cards that you don't have to cremate it. You can just have it sitting on the field and block your opponent's attacks in order to prevent you from taking more damage than you have to. Benedict Angel, this is Advanced Imbue 2, being a 2-cost, and on enter if it's imbued, draw a card to your memory and recover 2. Effectively a buffed up Windmill Engineer. However, you generally are going to be playing this with the cremation in mind, just because you're going to be getting the draw 2 off your cremation, draw into memory off this. Now, it can be a little bit dangerous because you have to advance Imbue 2 to draw into memory. Often that's going to be earlier in the game. This is a great card late game because you're recovering and then get cards in memory as well. However, in the early game, if you're playing this, you do need to be careful because you can quite often end up losing cards in memory when you go to level up, bring something out. And this can end up in situations where you might be forcing yourself to just take a materialization off from leveling up, which can put you behind in the game. Dungeon Guide. If you've been playing this game long enough, then you'll know what Dungeon Guide is. Staple card. It only recently became cheap enough to actually put into any deck that is below $100. It used to be this was $80 of that $100 budget. However, now it's getting almost to the point where it is actually super viable in under $50 decks. It's still sitting about $67 for the cheapest copy. However, I'm just waiting because I just know it's going to go below $5. But at least I hope it does. If it doesn't, well, this might be a good point to pick up some. But I do just want to see that get a little bit less as the more direct collection decks become more and more available and just on the market everywhere. Exploit vulnerability, we already talked about this. Great card to have, just to cycle cards. It's a good thing to be able to play in response to your Xander level 2 ability. Draw a card, return it to your hand with Xander level 2, and then draw another card straight away. Fast Cure, good staple recovery floating memory. This also will trigger Photonic Blade, so it might be one of those cards that you might want to bring out Photonic Blade in the late game, then activate this to get cards into memory, recover 4. Yes, you're not going to really need to floating memory at that point, but it's just the type of thing that could give you that extra 1 damage if you're trying to find it. Incap, one of the best cards in any assassin deck. You're running assassin, you're running incap, or incapacitate, sorry. I've always called it incap, I won't stop now. Negate target action card activation. Fast speed, 4 cost, but costs 2 less of your assassin. Even non-assassin decks run this. You should always be running it. If you don't have a set, go buy a set. It's in the Recollection deck for Tristan. However, it was also released in PTM again, so good place to go find it. Very cheap. I think they're only about 10-20 cents each. So definitely something I'd pick up if you're looking at playing Assassin. Resolute Stand, probably one of the best preventions for attack damage in the game. Has the 3 cost, but level 2 plus if you may activate it without paying its reserve cost if you do skip your next draw phase. You're not always want to do that. Of course, the Luxem, you want to get the cards, you want to draw a ton of cards. However, it is the option there if you would rather hold up maybe an incap and be able to prevent attack damage in the same turn if you're scared of your opponent playing multiple different ways. Now, this will prevent 3 of the attack damage no matter what. We will see cards in the meta like Calming Breeze, which is if it's less than 3 or 3 or less, then it will prevent it. Otherwise, it won't prevent it. However, this will just take 3 of the damage off any attack. And so if your opponent's playing things like Rending or just a ton of allies, this is a good thing to be able to bring out. Slice and Dice, 2 cost. We've already talked about the effect multiple times. It is probably the main win con of your deck. There is a card further down that we'll talk about that is another alt win con, but it's more of a fun inclusion for me because I like the card. However, Slice and Dice is going to be the main way you're going to close out a lot of games in the late game. Either that or just playing 2 light res assaults, as we'll talk about soon. Stalwart Shieldmate. This is, well, used to be one of the perfect first turn. Play Shieldmate, Cremation Ritual it, draw 2, and then play maybe another Shieldmate or another Library Witch or something like that. Now there's a lot of graveyard hate. Of course, we've seen the recent boom in raccoons. Oh, God help us all. But it's not as powerful as it used to be, but it's still a good thing to be able to play out, force your opponent to have to kill it, give you a flowing memory before they actually attack your face. It's also a good discard outlet for Creative Shock if you feel like your opponent's going to have that main phase interaction or bring out something like Thurible. Creative Shock. If you've played a fire deck, you know what Creative Shock is. It's fire staple. It's in every fire deck. I don't think I've really seen any fire decks that don't run it, just because it's draw 2 cards, then discard a card. You're very rarely going to have the class bonus effect unless you're playing Mage, of course. And so it's just a way to filter cards, get flow memory into your bin, draw more cards, especially into the late game. It can just help you get rid of the D cards in your hand and replace them with Luxem. Cremation Ritual. Of course, this is the card that combos with Stalwart, with Benedict Angel, Angel Intendant, and Dungeon Guide. A lot of people don't really focus on the fact that you can actually cremate a Dungeon Guide. And once you've gone level 3, if you're then able to straight away have enough cards to then cremate it, draw more cards, get cards into memory, you're going to be in a pretty good position. Planet Explosives. Just 2 copies of Planet Explosives in this deck. It is one of those cards where it can be very explosive and change the game quite a bit if you do get it, but often it can feel pretty clunky in your hand. It has Prepare 1, deal 2 damage to target unit. If it's prepared, deal 4 damage to that unit instead. So this will remove a majority of allies that you may be having problems with, like Asins or other Taunters that you just want to be able to remove in order to get your attacks through. But it is also a good thing to hit face with as well. Quite often, if it's the only assassin card in my deck, in my hand, or I'm in a situation where I don't really want to play out an incap and show my opponent that I've got access to it yet, I will go level 2. In response to level 2 effect here, I'll then play a Plant Explosive fast speed, prep it, deal 4 damage to my opponent, then be able to put 2 prep counters on, remove 1, and return it to my hand straight away, giving me not only same influence again, but then 4 extra damage on my opponent, so I'm just one step closer to killing them already. Reduced Ash. As you'll see in this meta, there is a lot of cards that will mess with you. Nullifying Mirror is probably the main one. Safeguard in some situations you might want to be able to get rid of earlier. Terraforming if you think you're able to go for the kill on your next turn and the Terraforming is going to stop you. It's just such a good card to have in your deck. I was going to be running Excalibur in this deck, however Excalibur's back up to like $6-7 a copy, just because Mordred came out, so it's actually a viable card to use in that deck. So it started spiking in price. As we'll go into that in the upgrades, it's one of those cards that I'd probably add in. But Reduced Ash is another good alternative. It does put our fire count up to 12 cards, which can be a little bit on the edge for Spirit of Serene Fire decks. So if you were having a problem where you're often having to land your release and ending up with a ton of fire left in your hand, this is probably one of those cards I'd change to a Excalibur, and then maybe change Plant Explosives or a couple Cremations or something. The deck, when you go down in fire count, you end up getting probably rid of all the Cremations, sticking with Creative Shock, maybe having a couple Plant Explosives, and the whole deck just changes completely. But I think this is just a good, consistent base to give to a newer player that is able to consistently get you the cards in order to play the game and interact with your opponent without having to think too much about, should I keep this card, should I play this card, when should I do what. Moving on to the Luxem cards, we have Gleaming Cut. Now, I'm very guilty of it as well, of overvaluing Gleaming Cut, just because quite often I'll look at my starting hand and there is Luxem Sight, Light Weavers, 2 Gleaming Cuts, and a couple other cards, and I'm looking at it going, I don't want to lose these cards. These are the cards that when I go to level 3, I'm able to put into my memory to then draw a ton of more cards and be back up to full influence at level 3 and able to interact with my opponent. However, put these to the bottom on your glimpses, please. I've learnt the lesson myself enough to the point that I still do it to myself and I still regret it every time. There is no point in having these in your hand right at the start of the game when you're not able to play them, ending up with a whole hand of Luxem and just not being able to play the game at all and losing because of it. However, going into the late game, definitely a great card to have. Remember, it is an attack card. You can just play it for 2. Attack for 2, reveal something like a Light Weavers or a Luxem Sight to get the heal or damage, and then deal 4 damage to whatever you're attacking as well. I have actually had to use it a bit recently in another different version of this deck I've been playing, and it's one of those ones where you don't feel great having to attack with it, but it is there as an option. The main thing is that when you reveal it while you are Luxem and have the class bonus, you get to banish it to draw 2 cards. Light Weavers, the namesake of this deck, this is what makes this deck so powerful and works so well. 4 cost, fast speed, reveal all cards from your memory, choose any amount of units and deal damage equal to the amount of cards revealed this way, split among them. Now, the thing with this is, it's again one of those effects where your opponent has to respond before you reveal the cards. Effectively, once this starts resolving, so you reveal your cards, you then choose where the damage goes and that damage is done. It does not target, it chooses. So choose is always on resolution, target is chosen before resolution, if that makes sense. Also, this is a skill. A lot of people will go, oh, I'll give my thing Spell Shroud, or I'll stop you with this, or I'll counter this spell. This does not work against this. It is a skill. It gets around Spell Shroud, and also choose does not target, so it gets around Spell Shroud as well on that part. So it gets around it for 2 reasons, and also gets around things that say you can't target the champion, or this can't be the target of spells like Spell Shroud on a Shinju ally. So it's just one of those ones where there's not very many ways that your opponent can stop this. Of course, they can blanch, they can play Safeguard, just prevents a little bit of damage. If they do blanch with a big memory, then it will end up in a situation where quite often you just have to deal a ton of damage to the blanch, kill it, and then go for something else further in the game. But often you won't be playing these unless you know your opponent's not going to have any interaction, or if you know that whatever interaction they have, you are able to beat it in order to then follow through and kill them. The main way that this deck used to win was effectively you get 10 influence at level 3, opponent would be hands down, you play 2 of these back to back, dealing 16 damage, maybe revealing 1 from memory as well, dealing 20 damage, and seeing as you've probably done a little bit of chip damage earlier in the game, you can quite often close the game out pretty fast. However, as we'll see in a second, there is a reason people hate playing against this deck, and that is because of Luxem Sight. Element bonus, whenever you reveal this card from your memory, recover 3. So effectively, with your level 3 ability, allowing you to reveal all the cards in memory at the beginning of each turn, beginning of each of your turns, you're going to get to recover 3 every time you reveal one of these. When you end up with 3 or 4 of these in your memory, you're recovering 9 or 12 damage a turn. Quite often, doesn't matter what your opponent's playing, they're not going to be able to keep up with the damage dealing as you are recovering. Thing is, they're going to have to go down and influence so much, trying to get as much damage out as possible, that while you're just sitting here, gaining influence, getting up in cards, being able to interact and stop them without really losing anything, and then recovering all that damage back. It does have the ability of being able to play it to just draw a card. Yes, that comes into effect sometimes. There are times where you are about to die, there is nothing you can do to stop it, but being able to play Luxem Sight to try to draw something like an Incap or a Resolute might be the best situation to have, and in that situation it's not feeling great, but something you might just have to do. Strike of Singularity. This is one of the pet cards, or the pet card of the deck. I was playing another version of the deck where you ran Strike of Singularity and By Fragrance. Now, if you don't know what By Fragrance is, I might put a copy up on the somewhere here. Effectively, it chooses an attack in an intent, and that attack gains on hit. Create a copy of this attack in the attacker's intent, and that attacker may declare another attack that turn. Something along those lines. I'm not sure exactly what the wording of it is. But when you combo these two together with a Photonic Blade, even when it doesn't have any counters on it and it's just attacking for 3, you're coming in for 7. This has the effect of, as long as the attacker is attacking a unit controlled by a player with no cards in their hand, Strike of Singularity has, if this attack would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. Effectively, you attack your opponent's champion, comes in for 7. They will have no cards in their hand because you have just used your level 3 ability, made them put cards into memory, and they're out. It'll deal 7, doubling the 14 damage. You then, before the damage goes through, you'll By Fragrance it, create another copy in the intent with the Photonic Blade as the weapon being chosen again, and then you'll come in for another 14 damage, dealing 28 damage in one turn, which kills pretty much every champion out there. Now, it does require 8 cards in hand in order to pull this off, which is very similar to the Light Weavers being 10 cards, but it does happen a little bit sooner and can catch your opponent off they're not expecting it. However, in this version of the deck, I did feel that the Slice and Dice line was a little bit more consistent, just because you're able to get those prep counters throughout the game, you're able to be set up, you don't require to have 2 cards in order to make the combo work, you just need 1. So it's just a little bit better. I would love By Fragrance to be the end all of cards and to make this be an absolute unstoppable deck, but it's just not. I learnt that at regionals I went to, so now we've just gone down to Strike. You probably don't need to run Strike in this deck. I just found it's a good card to have. It's a cool card to have in order to just deal even 8 damage to your opponent in late game. You bring Assassin's Ripper out and you haven't got enough prep counters in order to do the whole Slice and Dice line. You can use this along with Assassin's Ripper to deal the 7 damage as well, doubling to 14 damage. And especially when you got Light Weavers or 2, 14 damage can quite often end the game. Uncover the Plot. This is one of those cards that I've tried to cut from Lux decks constantly, but it's just such a good card to have. It's a good card to be able to banish early on to level up. Good card to put on the bottom at the beginning of the game. It's a good card to play. It's a good card to just reveal from your memory to make your opponents put stuff down. It has target player reveals all cards in memory. Draw a card. Pass bonus, put 2 preparation counters on your champion. So you're always going to target yourself with this. Pretty much. There are the odd situation where you're going to target your opponent just to see what they have, see if they've got the interaction for the kill line that you're about to go for. However, a lot of the time, because it's only their memory, the cards you care about might be in their hand, so you generally just want to leave it where it is and not worry about it. So targeting yourself, revealing all your Luxem cards, getting all their effects, and then being able to heal damage, and then draw another card to replace it. Those 2 prep counters in this deck will come into effect because, of course, we've got the Slice and Dice lines. However, in a lot of other Luxem decks, you might find that their prep counters aren't as needed, or end up stacking up a bit more than they will in this one. Moving on to sideboard, as you'll see, I hate slimes. Slimes is fun to play, but I hate playing against it, because quite often you can end up in a situation where you just feel like you can't beat this deck, and they just have every answer under the book. They've got the massive attacks, they've got the lots of spell damage. You can't really focus on one thing to stop, because whatever you go to stop, they're just going to play something else to go the other direction. So Dustlight's a good thing to be able to bring in. You may find that they're running a bit of removal for it now, just because there's a lot of Fantasians in the meta that are hating on a lot of decks. So there's reason to run Fantasia hate in pretty much every deck at the moment. So I wouldn't count on this as a, I'm going to win this game because I've got this. It's just a good thing to bring into the deck, play out turn 1 or 2 to just slow your opponent down. So when they do that whole DG to level 3 and play a bunch of slimes out, they're not able to attack with their advanced element ones, and forces them to play a bit of a slower game plan. Now, to go with that, we've got the Tome of Ignorance, just the cheapest regalia that is Umbra, because of course this has the Astra ability of destroying an Fantasia as well. However, we're going for the Dustlight Community gains champions get -1 level. Of course, in our deck, we don't really care about levels. There's nothing in here that's going to really affect us in terms of losing a level, so it doesn't really hinder us at all, but it's going to really hurt slimes who rely on a lot of pride mechanics in order to attack the advanced slimes. Be noted, Ghastly Slime does not have pride. If you're playing against Fire Slimes and they're playing Ghastly Slime, that thing will hit you and it will hurt. I did get caught out by that, but did not realize it didn't have pride until I played this into the slimes, and then they played a Ghastly Slime after going level 3 with 2 counters on it, ended up attacking for like 5 a turn, and it took me a couple of turns to be able to remove it. Spout of the Departed, as I said, lots of Fantasias in the meta at the moment that are really painful to deal with. You've got Stifling Gaia, you've got all the Fractal decks, you've got Razor Gale. There's a lot of different things that this can hit. So it's just one of those cards I feel like most decks should probably run. It was starting to tick up there in price for a little bit, but as we can see, it came out in the recent event packs for RDO. So it's not super hard to find anymore. I have found it's pretty common. I think I've pulled 2 or 3 already out of event packs, and I only get 1 a week, maybe 2 a week if I'm lucky. So this is one of those cards that's pretty cheap now, pretty easy to get. I definitely recommend running it. It gets -1 cost, so it becomes a 2 cost after you get level 2+. So there really is no downside to this compared to Disenchant, seeing as we're going to be going level 3 most games. If you are running decks that are running only 1 level, maybe very really going level 2, you may want to look into Disenchant. Slow speed, but effectively the exact same effect of just destroy tank Fantasia. We're never going to get the last effect in this deck. You're only going to get that if you're running a Guoja list that runs Fate Stones. As mentioned, the 2 baubles. Just one of those ones that you get to choose which one you'd rather have mainboard. Moving into the upgrades, first we've got the Regalia cards. $85 for a backup charger. Ouch. That is the current cheapest copy of a non-foil backup charger on TCG Player. I would not recommend paying that. I think recently solds are like 65 to 70 US currently. However, even that is a really expensive cost for something that's kind of, it's a staple, but I wouldn't say it is a broken staple of any means. Like if we look at Lost Province here, I'd say Lost Province is probably a better card to pick up than Backup Charger is. And it's only $38.72 for the RDO version. The first ed PTM version is a lot more expensive. However, it's a nicer art, so that's why I chose to put it here. But yeah, Backup Charger, $85 is just kind of ridiculous. I wouldn't say buy that at the moment. I wouldn't be shocked if it is a reprint in SB4. Just being that SB4 is probably the next closest thing for us to get, which will allow for reprints of really sought after cards like this. Nullifying Mirror. This could have been any number of things. Nullifying Mirror, Nullifying Lantern, just any of the preventions for decks that you're afraid of running into at the moment. Mirror is my thing where you're running into Luxem decks, you're running into a lot of wind decks at the moment that are running prevention. Water decks that are running like the Cerulean and as well as the Advanced Element Imbue Angels. This just stops all of that and can be a multi-use thing in order to bring out into a lot of different matchups. There aren't really too many Regalia in this deck that weren't in the main deck already. However, it's one of those ones where everybody I know that plays Luxem plays a different Regalia deck of some kind. just because you have your preferences, you have the type of playstyle you like, and it's really one of those decks where you need to find what you want to play over what other people play. Moving to the main board, for the upgrades, we've got Sadi coming at $51 US for the cheapest current copy on TCG Player. This is a staple. It's come down a little bit from its top point of about $80, $90. However, it's still pretty expensive. It's generally one of those cards you run 2 or 3 copies of it in a Luxem Xander deck. If you are wanting to run other assassin decks, I'd recommend picking up 4 copies of it, just because it'll probably creep up over time. It already has CSR treatment in the original MRC first edition. However, I can definitely see this getting an SP4 print as well, being a card that, of course, they couldn't reprint it in RDO because it was only FTC and DOA reprints in that set. However, MRC ALC probably needs some reprints on certain cards like Carter and Sadi, so they'd be great cards to add into SP4 in order to bring the price down and give us new copies, and I'd love to have a bullish copy of Sadi. Excalibur Cleansing Light, $6 for the cheapest copy currently. It's a great card, perfect removal, able to remove anything, able to remove the Fantasias, able to remove Regalia, able to remove allies, only can remove champions, then you'd be set. But it's one of those cards where it didn't quite fit into the budget like I wanted it to, so I decided to remove it. However, if you have a couple lying around, or if you know someone that you can get them from for a decent price, good card to pick up and put in the deck. Topsy Decree, another great card for the deck. $50 price point again. Pretty expensive, especially when you're looking at probably wanting 3 of these for a deck. However, with so much floating memory out there at the moment, so much graveyard interaction, including even the aggro decks are running a lot of fire bases that enable them to, like the erupting one from the Ascent that was just been. If you have this, you're able to then get rid of their fire cards early on, slow their game plan down in order to get rid of their floating memory, get rid of the pieces they really want to keep. And it's another one of those ones where if you're able to destroy their Fantasias in Razorgale, and then they go to try rescue it with a card to bring it back to their hand, you can then in response use this, banish it, and they can no longer get that back. Blanche almost was in the deck. It was in my sideboard for a little bit, but the price tag of the deck started getting up near the $100 point, and I decided I wanted to make this deck a little bit more budget friendly. I wanted to make it like the original budget decks where it's trying to stick to the $50 price point even though it has Dungeon Guide in it. So at a $5.59 price point, I don't think you can go wrong buying a playset right now. This is the cheapest it's been since FTC first came out. And when it first came out, people underestimated this massively. I think it got down to like a $2 price point at one point. I should have brought up the whole New Zealand supply at that point because there was a bit floating around and they were all blade cheap. And then they got up to $30, $40 each at one point. And then now being back to $5.59 each is just great. It's one of those staple cards where you're going to run it in pretty much any level 3 deck in the sideboard, sometimes even in the main board, because it's able to stop so much damage from such a wide variety of decks that it's a type of card you can never really miss with. Moving on to our pricing. Hero deck, we have $8.90. Main deck, we have $56.40. Sideboard, $2.77. So material deck and our sideboard are very cheap. Our material deck is actually really blade cheap, with the main price being the $4.51 for the Spirit of Serene Fire, and then the $2.50 for the Dummy Trainer. If you remove the Dummy Trainer and maybe just bring another bauble in rather than running that, or you are able to find a way to get a backup charger or something that isn't going to cost you the money to buy it, then this can just be very blade cheap. Main deck, of course, $6.48 for the Dungeon Guides. So there we have $25, $26 for just the Dungeon Guides alone. If you remove that, suddenly your main board is down to $30, which we're looking at like a $40 deck effectively for a Luxem Xander, which is unheard of. Seekers Lightweavers are down to $3.98 each as well. They, at one point, I think, got up to like $30 a pop. It was kind of insane. The deck's never been like meta in terms of everyone should be playing this, everyone should be really worried about it. Kind of always just been a fringe meta deck. Like, you'll see it at events, people will be playing it, but you don't really tick specifically for it because you're not guaranteed to see it. But yeah, the fact it got so expensive was kind of stupid. Back down to $4 a pop is probably a good price point for them, and I would probably say if you want to play Luxem, pick them up. Can't go wrong. especially if you maybe not want to play it now, but you want to play in the future. All these cards are very cheap at the moment. There isn't really anything that I would say is overpriced. Benediction Angel being an uncommon at 91 cents is probably a little bit expensive, but it's a good card that's played in a lot of advanced element decks at the moment, so I can see why it holds that price point. That brings our total $68.07. So as mentioned, $70 deck, a little bit over the $50 price point I want to stick to. If you remove the $26 in dungeon guides, and suddenly you're down to a $40, $42 deck, and you're pretty set in terms of actually doing well at a competition. And if you're a new player at the moment, I definitely recommend buying the Mordred Recollection deck. Not only do you get 2 packs of RDO, you get sleeves, and you get a deck that gives you both the dungeon guides and the Frostborn Paladins, which is another staple used in a lot of water decks. And you're going to be pretty set from there to build any deck you want, because dungeon guides have always been the main thing to draw you back from actually being able to play competitively with a lot of what my budget decks do. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know down below what else you'd like to see. We've also got Nationals coming up. We've got a lot of dealer stuff happening, so I'm not going to be having a huge amount of time in order to build more budget decks. I've got a few on the run at the moment that I'm kind of ticking and editing as I go, so we might see another one in the coming week. Once I go to Nationals, we'll probably have a week or two where it might just be the vlog from Nationals as I'll be away for work, but we've definitely got a lot coming up, and I look forward to seeing what you guys would like me to build. Until next time, stay safe.